In part one of God's master plan for reaching everyone with the gospel, something that we know is God's heart from John 3:16, we saw that it was a plan that was so good it would work in every single generation in every part of the world for all time. And we saw that at the core of that plan was every follower of Jesus being involved as a conversational communicator of his life-giving message. His plan was never about having a few super gifted communicators do all the work, while the rest of us get to just sit back, enjoy our pina coladas as we cheer them on and support them financially. Unfortunately, all too often, this is what's happening. And while it may reach a lot of people, and it does, it can never get the job done of reaching everyone, which is why it wasn't God's plan. He came up with a better way, which is every follower of Jesus stepping into their new identity of ambassadors of Christ and engaging in conversations with people that they find in their orbit. A process we call multiplication, where everyone is involved. Here in part two of God's master plan for reaching everyone with the message of Jesus, we want to take an honest look at just what this looks like in our everyday lives. I mean, are we supposed to all become missionaries and uproot and move to another country? Are we to take vows of poverty and quit our jobs? Are we to become traveling evangelists? For starters, let me give you a perspective that if you get this, it'll change everything. God arranges people's lives so they can find him. He's not playing hide and go seek. He loves people and he longs to connect with them. When the Apostle Paul was in the city of Athens, Greece, he found himself in a conversation with a bunch of philosophers over religion, of all things. And I want you to listen to what he says in Acts chapter 17. I'm going to start reading in verse 26. And he, speaking of God, made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. He's just reminding us that God has been involved with humanity from the very beginning. He goes on, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation. He appointed when and where they would live in history. Why did he do this? Verse 27, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him or reach out for him and find him, though he's not far from each one of us. Do you understand what this is saying? God has arranged for people to be in an orbit at a particular time and place in history and in a particular environment, the people that don't know God. And he has also placed people who know God in that very same time, place in history and environment. Why did he do this? Because he wants to intersect those two environments so they can find God. It's kind of like in a movie where I'm sure you've probably seen this, where there's some kind of a matchmaker character who's trying to get these two people together. So they're working hard behind the scenes so that they accidentally meet. And all of a sudden, shazam, they meet, they fall in love, and they live happily ever after. That's what God is doing all the time. But in order for that to happen, he sometimes has to inconvenience us and rearrange our orbits. I still remember when I was living in Texas some years ago, and right in the middle of the day, my car battery died. Very inconvenient, but there was a big box store not too far away that had an automotive department, so I went over there, got another battery, and I was happy. Until the next day when it died again. So I had to go back to that store, and I couldn't get there till just 5 minutes before they were closing. It was about 5 to 9. And they were pretty much cleaning up. But this one guy began to take care of me, and he did some testing. And after everybody left, we started having a conversation. And you want to know what happened in that next 45 minutes? Not only did I figure out what was wrong with my car, but I had the opportunity to share the gospel with him, and he became a follower of Jesus. God had to change my orbit so I could come into the orbit of somebody else who was seeking him. Over the years, I've gotten into the habit of when something happens that kind of changes my schedule to simply say, God, are you up to something? Are you trying to put me in the orbit with someone who's looking for you? And I've got to tell you, it just changes the way I look at the inconveniences of my life. And lots of times it just puts a smile on my face. Okay, here's the second point, and this is really important. Words are necessary. You know, one of the things I hear a lot from Christians these days is they say that they're part of the silent witness program. We don't say anything. We just kind of are undercover Christians and we show Jesus by our lives. Then when we've done our part, God will send in some communication specialists and close the deal. Of course, showing the reality of God through our lives is critical, but it just falls far short because words are necessary. A lot of this silent witness thinking comes from a phrase that's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, who's the founder of the Franciscan order way back in the 13th century. And here's that phrase: preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. That sounds so good, doesn't it? But there's a couple problems with this. For starters, they've never been able to actually validate that St. Francis ever really said this. He did talk about living your life in a way that backs up what you're saying, but never about replacing your words with the example of your life. But the even greater problem is that it goes counter to what the scriptures tell us. I want you to listen to what the Apostle Paul says in the New Testament book of Romans, which is one of the best books in the entire Bible when it comes to explaining the gospel. Let's look at Romans chapter 10, starting in verse 14. Here's what it says: how will they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how will they hear without a preacher? Preacher means a communicator, a herald, somebody to use words to explain the truth. Down to verse 17. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ. It takes words for people to know about Jesus. It takes words for them to know about the cross, to know about the resurrection, for them to know about forgiveness. It takes words for people to understand the gospel. Now, I think one of the main reasons people use this silent witness approach is because they lack confidence that they have the words they need in order to engage in conversations and present the gospel of Jesus Christ clearly. Here at Therefore Project, we want to help you have those words. So please take advantage of what's available here on the website. Let's take a look right now at how this works very practically as you go through your day. All of us live in multiple communities, don't we? You have a work community, you have a neighborhood community, maybe you have some kind of a sports community or social community where you get around things like, who knows, poetry or cycling or crafts. This whiteboard right here represents that community. In the blue circles are the people in that community. There's somebody else in that community, and that is you. And just for example purposes, let's say that all the people that are blue have no relationship with Jesus, and here's you who are red. You do have a relationship with Jesus, and you find yourself in the same orbit as those people who don't know him yet. Now, you may find yourself thinking, but I don't like this orbit. I'm only around it because that's where I have to work or because these people live next door to me. I'd rather be around my own kind. I want to be in a church orbit around a bunch of people who are like me. Can I just say that if that's true of you, that needs to change, because this is the orbit where you'd find Jesus, something he took a lot of heat for, because these were the very people he loved and wanted to redeem. You can't catch fish in a bathtub. So you might think, okay, I guess I can invite them to my church, maybe at Easter or Christmas, or we have some special event. After all, isn't that why we give money to the church? It's their job, right? Well, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a good thing to invite people to church, but it doesn't replace this. In many ways, what church provides is like air support, but you're the boots on the ground. God planned from eternity past for your orbit to intersect with those who don't know him so you can have conversations that just might change their life. You don't need to be praying for God to send someone else in there to reach them, because he already has. You, his ambassador. You're right there. He's got them covered. Now, let me give you one last thought. Coming to Christ nearly always involves relationships and conversations. I mean, just think of your own journey of how you became a follower of Jesus. And I'll bet you it involved relationships and conversations. And this is going on right now all over the world as you're watching this video. Even in countries that have great opposition to Christianity. They're going on in Russia and China and Iraq and Iran and North Korea. Conversations are going on hundreds of feet underground in mines. They're going on in ships and in submarines deep under the water. These conversations are going on in airplanes thousands of feet in the air. They're going on in office buildings and in neighborhoods. These conversations are going on everywhere all the time, and they can't be stopped. But you know what? We can stop them. We can hang up our Ambassador of Christ badge and say, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not going to get into these conversations about Jesus. I'm going to go back to the pina coladas and cheer on those that are doing the job as I support them financially. And when we do that, heaven weeps and the heart of God breaks, because he loves those who from time past has intentionally put into your orbit. So can I just challenge you? Can I implore you? Can I plead with you? Don't hang up the badge. Put on your Ambassador of Christ badge every single day and say, I'm going out into the world that God loves as his official representative. And as God opens up opportunities, I'm going to jump into those conversations. And as I do, I'm going to experience the joy of working with God as he moves and changes people's lives, because that's what the gospel does. Therefore, Project was created to help you get better at this, to be more relaxed in conversations, and to be able to answer questions in a way that's not about winning arguments, but about winning people. So join the adventure and work with God and what he is doing in the lives of those he loves, one conversation at a time.